Grey squirrels are perceived as a pest or vermin because of ecological and economic damage that they cause in the UK. The red squirrel is our native squirrel species. The grey squirrel was deliberately introduced by the Victorians back in the late 1890s, early 1900s, and grey squirrels have, if you like, gone on the rampage. Ultimately, that's led to massive population and distribution declines in red squirrels. The grey squirrels, through no fault of their own, have imported squirrel pox virus to which our native red squirrels are not immune. The grey squirrel is. So red squirrel populations have plummeted over the last 100 or so years. If we want to hold on to red squirrels, then grey squirrels need to be population limited to some extent. The other issue is the economic issue with forestry. Grey squirrels cause damage to woodlands. The science indicates that grey squirrels cause more damage than red squirrels. That causes both ecological damage to woodlands and to trees, also economic implications for forestry and foresters. So there's a need to limit or control grey squirrels for those reasons.
Grey squirrel damage on trees. A lot of people don't quite understand what's going on and how to recognise it. The grey squirrel attacks the tree because it's after the phloem, which is a sugary sap substance under the bark. It starts with a thumbnail-sized patch. It's no bigger than that, and this tree on the right has got lots of little marks, and so is the one behind it. And that's the grey squirrel. It's testing the phloem. Over here, we've got a huge patch there, so damage score 3/4, but the phloem, or the tree is trying to heal its wound, and the phloem is very high in this callus. And here we've got the squirrel has come back the following year, so that damage there is a year after this, and just done a little trial. So that's the sort of sequence you get of damage. Ultimately, with this tree, the damage is so severe that this will snap off now. If we get a strong wind, this is dead and it will snap off, and with it being so near to the ride, it then causes major hazard for people walking along the ride.
Considering the sustainability of our woodlands, our least sustainable woodlands are our native broadleaf species that are susceptible to graze. This is a landscape scale problem across the estate. We've looked at control methods to try and knock the population down. Our problem in the West Country is we've got a very connected landscape, and we can't do it in isolation. Our history of warfarin control, which is a poisoned wheat, that rather like rat poison, through targeted hoppers which only allow grey squirrel access, didn't work because nobody else in the area was doing it. So you clear a vacuum and the squirrels just re-invade, and ultimately it was futile. So we're continuing to get the damage. Our vulnerable trees were continuing not to thrive and not grow, and unless we change that, that will happen to the trees that we plant today and tomorrow. In that palette of species, it stops us having the oaks, beeches, silver birch, field maple. Native species which would add to the biodiversity have no future, and therefore we avoid them. It's a waste of money to plant them.
When you've got an unwanted population of animals, there's no nice way of dealing with this that doesn't cause some level of animal suffering. And the most likely approach to dealing with unwanted populations of grey squirrels is going to be a combination of different approaches. They can be trapped, they can be poisoned, they can be shot. For example, with physical methods like killing them manually after they've been trapped or shooting them, the welfare consequences can be severe if these go wrong. With trapping, there's the stress of being retained in the trap, and you can also trap non-target species by mistake. With wildlife contraception, this actually isn't feasible yet. Research is ongoing, and even then this is involving a lot of research in the laboratory. So laboratory animals are suffering in order to develop the contraceptives, just as laboratory animals are being used in order to develop the gene drives. But whatever technique is chosen, it's important to remember that these are sentient animals, they have intrinsic worth, and it's not right to cause them suffering just because they're causing a problem for humans.
Language is important, and the words we use inform our attitudes, which then inform our actions. Labelling certain animals as a pest, automatically you're giving them less consideration. And that might not be a conscious choice, but it's then pervasive throughout the whole of anybody involved in wild animal manipulation. I think it's also really important to think about how much human perceptions and biases affect decision making. In the past, there was a time when red squirrels were seen as a pest and were killed because they were damaging trees, you know. And now we want to kill the grey squirrels to protect the red squirrels. So it's really important to be aware of those perceptions and those biases. Moving away from direct human control or manipulation over the situation, there is some evidence that when pine martens are present, that shifts the balance between the populations of grey and red squirrels. Because pine martens are a predator, the red squirrels are more able to get away from the pine martens, so in the end it has more of an effect on the grey squirrel population. It just emphasises what I said earlier about human perception and interference, because the pine marten was also a species that we persecuted in the past, and now we're seeing potential benefits to allowing them to return. That's the kind of potentially more natural solution to the problem, if there is a problem, which is just allowing balances within ecosystems to return.
The red squirrel, which is susceptible to squirrelpox virus, invariably lethal for them. If we understood enough about the virus, we could genetically engineer the resistance into the red squirrel. You could do that, and let's say you did that in 50 squirrels in an experiment. How would you spread that? We're not going to go around every wood with a syringe of red squirrel semen and impregnate every female. That's not how yes, it does in agriculture, but not in wildlife. So you need another way of disseminating it, and this is where gene drive comes in. So you've got the combination of genetic engineering tools, which are incredibly efficient, incredibly precise, a strategy called gene drive, which allows you to distribute out from a small number of founder animals. That makes it real. It makes it plausible. It makes it realistic to say we could do it. We know gene drive works from a number of contained studies in insects, not in mammals yet, but in insects it works. That allows me to design the experiment, design the study, and discuss the study and get people to ask questions. I mean, do we want to genetically engineer livestock? Do we not? Would there be some cases where you can, where you cannot? If we think it could be useful, what do we want to do? Do we want to control pests? Do we want to stop disease transmission? And I think these are exciting topics to have a debate around.
What's very smart about gene drive is essentially it's identifying those traits that make animals invasive, and rather than allowing it to become a strong point for the invasion, it actually hijacks that strength and uses it to help eliminate the species, if you like. So those animals that breed effectively, you're essentially using that effectiveness of breeding and reproduction to help remove them. They breed themselves out of the game. And there's a great attraction to that, but there is that sort of fundamental conundrum for us, I guess, that, where's our line of responsibility and level of intervention which is acceptable? We've caused these problems, and is there a point that we've got to just manage them as best we can, or should we always be open? I think we've got to be open to new ideas, but fundamentally changing the composition of the animals seems quite a step forward, or if not a step forward, it's quite a large step, regardless whether it's deemed to be forward or not. It requires quite a big fundamental change in our perspective of what invasive species management can or should be. But when it comes to gene drive, I'm glad I'm not going to have to make that call. And inherently for me, I don't often sit on the fence, but on this I would. I have yet to be persuaded that the technology is not ready, and therefore I'm not persuaded at the moment. When the technology is ready, I think you've got to be open to have a different assessment of where we are, and potentially do it if it works and if it ticks all these boxes. But I do inherently worry about our human nature to try and continually do stuff to try and fix the stuff that we've already done. And often in wildlife management, the best response is to do rather less stuff than you want to.
The response was very, very positive. Some incredibly interesting questions about sort of knock-on effects and whether there'd be any negative impacts on other species. And I think all of that was answered sufficiently, actually. Personally, I don't know. I don't know whether it's going to be palatable to the public, whether it's going to be acceptable. Immunocontraception certainly has had some problems. There's an awful lot of money that is going into that. How much money will be needed to get gene editing going? Will it be the silver bullet? Will it, they say within 20 years we might have a reduction in the population to manageable levels? Who knows? That's fantastic. But how is that going to happen? And, will the public want that to happen? I don't know.
It is scientifically accepted we cannot exterminate grey squirrels in the UK using the current methods, in which case we have to, in theory, budget for the fact that we will be killing grey squirrels forever. Now, it's actually very difficult to get numbers on the costs of killing. The Royal Forestry Society earlier this year released a report which estimated that grey squirrels cause approximately £40 million worth of damage to UK forestry per year. That includes the cost of killing grey squirrels using current methods. There is no scientific evidence that the current methods actually reduce the economic cost caused by grey squirrels. It's not a good use of the money. But there are some solutions on the table, for example, gene drive. The economic costs are in the development, but actually, once the technology is applied, particularly if it's applied effectively, then actually the economic costs are substantially reduced versus investing in killing grey squirrels forever and ever and ever. And the social costs in that people are not having to kill squirrels but are limiting a population in a non-lethal manner. There are social as well as economic long-term benefits to that.
Again, one of the major concerns about using the gene drive technology, to take it to its ultimate conclusion, you could end up removing every grey squirrel from the landscape, from the country. And I'm not sure the British public, I'm not sure scientists are necessarily ready to remove an entire species from the landscape.
Once established, it is possible that gene drive technology could be a more humane way of controlling numbers of grey squirrels, but the problem is we just don't understand what the impact will be on grey squirrel behaviour. If it's mostly male squirrels being born, or if female fertility is reduced, what impact will that have on the behaviour of squirrels and on their aggression towards each other? You can imagine, for example, a scenario where the population is almost entirely males and females come into estrus. You could see there could be very high levels of aggression between squirrels, which would cause huge amounts of stress, which would be human-induced because the humans had introduced the gene drive. So there's a lot of unknown factors with respect to the behaviour and welfare of the grey squirrels, and also the wider impact on the ecosystem. Even if an invasive species is removed, that will still have an impact on all the other animals around it. So you can't just introduce a gene drive and walk away. It will need careful monitoring, and it may well need other management and interventions over the generations that it will take to work. Like any other tool then, gene editing can be used for purposes that many people would agree with and for some other purposes that are more controversial. The most important point is who gets to decide.
Thank you.